So our project is Dynamic Zombies, Luck and Strategy in an Apocalyptic Game World, and it's by Kiara, Julia, Hannah, and Gavin. Kiara isn't filming with us right now because she's having technical issues, but her voice will be here.
The development of self-driving cars poses ethical challenges that must be answered to maximize efficiency and safety for consumers and passersby. For example, how a self-driving car should respond in emergencies that could cause dilemmas such as a potential collision or, in our game's case, a zombie apocalypse. In the base game, the player spawns in the middle of a randomly generated map with floor, mud, fire, and wall areas. Pedestrians, victims, batteries, and zombies are scattered around the map. The player can gain points by taking victims to a hospital and running over zombies, or gain energy by picking up batteries. The player loses points for running over pedestrians and victims, or driving into fire, and loses energy by driving into mud.
In our game mode, pedestrians, victims, and zombies have the ability to move one block randomly every time the player moves. Pedestrians can also get infected by nearby zombies as they gradually turn into victims, and when their health becomes zero, they become zombies. We also have different age cohorts for pedestrians and victims, which also mean different health attributes. And these elements determine their infection rate and how much overall health they have. Finally, we have improved UI with visually appealing and easily identifiable blocks and icons. The addition of sound effects, an energy bar, and the visualization of points achieved each turn help engage the player in the game. In the base game, we have basic color blocks to denote areas of the map, and we also have keyboard characters to denote NPCs. But poor UI design and the static environment disengage the player from the game. In our game, we have obvious sound effects to indicate player action and different sprites to represent different aged NPCs and victims. Players are supposed to strategize about how they move the map in order to maximize points. Our reward system is very similar to the base game, so we also have that you gain points and also for leaving pedestrians alive by the end of your turn. A research question asks, how will a dynamic environment and varying NPC attributes affect human and machine decision-making? We hypothesized that the RL agent would be more willing to hit people and take risks that to increase long-term rewards over human player decisions. For example, an RL agent would rather go through fire or mud in order to run over a zombie or save a victim, rather than the human player, which would turn away and go do something else.
So for our data, we collected it from both humans and machines. For our human testers, we first explained the game to them, such as the rewards and the different features that we implemented. And then we let them play a random practice game so that they can get used to the controls and to prevent any mistakes that would result in data that misrepresent their actual decision making. Then for the actual data collection, we had them play 5 preset maps. For the machine data, we trained the AI and then let it play the 5 preset maps multiple times. With each play, we collected data on what map is being used and other stats, such as the NPC squished, picked up and saved, their age groups, the batteries picked up, and more. The numbers shown in these graphs are the average of all of the human plays or all of the machine plays. The left bars in each pair represent humans, and the right bars represent machines. And in these graphs, we are showing 7 different categories: total points, number of pedestrians squished, victims squished, zombies squished, victims picked up, batteries picked up, and victims saved. For all of the maps, human play did better than the machine in general. especially in things such as saving victims and squishing zombies. And for maps 1 to 3, we noticed that the pedestrians squished were about the same number for both human and machine. For map 4, we noticed that the machine tended to stay in the fire longer, which led to the negative average number of points. The average number of victims saved seems to be constant throughout all 5 maps. The amount of points may depend on the batteries picked up because it allows for more turns to gain more points, as well as the number of zombies being squished. And we also noticed that the AI tends to take a more passive approach than human.
So the general trend we found across all 5 maps was that the humans were far outperforming the RL agent. And this was true in almost every category except for pedestrian squish, which were the same between the machine and the person on maps 1 through 3. Humans were much better at picking up batteries to extend the playtime. They also were much better at saving victims than the machine. One small trend that we did notice was that human players prioritized younger victims, which does show a preference for greater terms and greater amount of points in the short term, as younger victims rewarded more points, but also were less likely to expire than the older victims. So it shows a prioritization of gaining more points in the short term over potentially risking those points to gain more in total. The main conclusion we reached was that the RL algorithm had a very hard time learning our game. And even though it possibly wasn't as well trained as it could have been, it is worth noting that it was trained and tested on a very limited set of maps, which should have given it a real advantage in learning the rules of the game. Instead, it seemed to fail to really understand the game environment or develop any real strategy that was comparable to human play. The reasons we think the RL agent struggled was that our game is quite reliant on luck. So the quality of the machine learning algorithm's strategy wasn't always reflected in its score and rewards. And the constantly changing positions leaves a lot out of the machine's control. So some very important things that we did, like the post-game rewards, which rewarded players for keeping pedestrians uninjured until the end of the game, were often far outside of the controller's power to affect, and created seemingly random scores just regardless of its strategy. So while it's realistic, as in situations like disaster relief, it's more important to make the best out of the situation than to simply try to control everything. It did make a very poor environment for RL training, as the feedback it was receiving was incredibly inconsistent. So a less random and less complex environment would have likely been a far better place to start it for training. And then future feature ideas. One was to further complicate the game's rules with factors such as ambulance health and a zombie cure. We could also add co-op with AI and specialized AI controllers. The idea behind this was that the AI seemed to struggle with the many factors and prioritizations needed within the game. So perhaps dividing up tasks with uniquely specialized AI controllers could have been a much more efficient way of teaching it. And another one was to semi-randomize events to make the outcomes more predictable and to give the AI a better grasp on the changes in the game world. Thank you for watching our presentation.